Welcome everybody to the U.S. Open Cup final preview. So, much like what we did with the Leagues Cup final preview, we're talking about Inter Miami, and as usual, Inter Miami, pretty much trying to get to the championship, and they did, which is usual at this point since Messi has been around. Now, how did they get here with the U.S. Open Cup? So, Inter Miami, starting off against Miami FC. And Miami FC, the Miami Classico, Miami Derby. This is still during the days of Phil Neville, and this is well before days of Messi, Busquets, Alba, and so on and so forth. Inter Miami ends up winning that game 2-2 with the penalties in the favor of 5-3 over Miami FC, and just a heartbreaking loss for Miami FC. But Inter Miami steals that game and moves on to the round of 32. And in round of 32, they end up facing against Charleston Battery of USL Championship. By the way, Miami FC is also in USL Championship, that second tier US soccer. The first tier, obviously MLS. They only won this game. They won this game 1-0 against Charleston, and that was an own goal. An own goal ends up winning them the game for Inter Miami. Then we go to US Open Cup round of 16. And guess who we played in US Open Cup round of 16? It's our Leagues Cup final opponent, Nashville. We ended up winning this game 2-1 over Nashville. And again, this is pre-Messi, Busquets, Alba era. This is pre-era, and before Tata Martino even came. And that's where I'm going with this. And then in June, they go to the quarterfinals to face another USL championship team, Birmingham Legion FC, and they won that game in the quarterfinals 1-0 against Birmingham. Only Stefanelli ended up scoring that one goal against Birmingham, and next thing you realize, they move on to the semifinals. Now, before the semifinals even happened, you looked back to the previous videos, not all this time, but most of the time, Leagues Cup games from Cruz Azul, that's when Messi came, Busquets came as well, all the way to the Leagues Cup final. You know the history, you know what happens, especially since watching my videos and watching these games yourselves. That was the turning point of, that's the turning point of Miami TVG and this channel. But after the Leagues Cup final, there was still another tournament. It's a US Open Cup tournament. We go to semifinal, where we play against a really powerhouse FC Cincinnati, where we have won this game in penalties 5-4. I talked about that in the previous video a while ago, so you check that video out. So, in all of that, it all leads up to tomorrow night against our opponent, Houston Dynamo FC. How did they get here? Let's talk about Houston. How did they get here? So obviously they start off in the third round as an MLS team for them. They start off playing against Miami FC's USL Championship rival, Tampa Bay Rowdies, and it was that one goal that sent them to the round of 32. Brooklyn reigns for Houston. That ultimately puts them in the round of 32, like I just said. Then they played against Kansas City. Where they actually held on tight in this one goal lead before one of the players, Chase Gasper, was getting sent off on an ejection card. 1-0. Kansas City was just unable to get one back. And and expectedly, Kansas City really dominated possession and pretty much dominated the whole game since the red card. And for some reason that I can't explain, Houston ends up winning the round of 32, which is, if you're asking me, that was impressive. Then they advance to the round of 16 against Minnesota United, where Minnesota United was just not able to find answers and ended up getting a red card on this game too. And Houston Dynamo really took advantage of the red card, and they end up, and actually Corey Barrett actually ended up getting a hat trick in this game in the 33rd minute in a penalty shoot. 68th minute and 89th minute. That's a hat trick. That's impressive there. Corey Baird, an impressive player. That's the team. That's the player to watch out for in the finals. We'll talk about that a little bit more later. So they advance to the quarterfinals against Chicago Fire, and once again against Chicago, they have won this game pretty impressively. So 4-1 against them, and then they move on to the semifinals, which happened after the Leagues Cup. And after the Leagues Cup, they were eliminated in a heartbreaking fashion against Charlotte FC. We don't talk about that if you're not comfortable with it. But they go to the semifinals against Real Salt Lake. And before this game happened, like I said, with their Miami, Miami did win that game against Cincinnati in the penalty shootout, which was an incredible battle. But this game really dictates who is going to host a semifinal. Who's going to host a U.S. Open Cup final? Well, so if Houston wins, Miami hosts the final. But Real Salt Lake wins, they would host the U.S. Open Cup final. But in the case of the semifinal game here, Houston Dynamo gets a 3-1 victory over Real Salt Lake. And they won this game 3-1. It was a low point for Real Salt Lake because there was a red card for them too, and then they have won this game 3-1, and this is where we are now. Miami meets up with Houston in Dry Pink Stadium tomorrow night against each other. Bam. Teams to watch out for. Players to watch out for is Stefanelli might be able to play. Capana and Martinez is most certainly going to play this one. For Corey Baird, that's the team. That's the player to really take notice here. He's a midfielder, but a scoring machine midfielder who has seized an opportunity and it puts one into the back of the net. This guy can play soccer. Now there is this talk. Last week, I did talk about Messi and the injury. I did talk about Alba and the injury. So, while there's no official ruling out of Messi, it's likely that he's going to play tomorrow. But most likely he's probably not going to start the game tomorrow. However, I cannot guarantee you he's going to play tomorrow. That is a little bit worrisome, but the good news is at least we have Busquets playing tomorrow against Houston. He is definitely the player to be forced to be reckoned with. That's what makes every other team nervous about this guy. He can play soccer. He can make people confused, make bad decisions, and then ultimately lead to Miami scoring on the assist. Now, can Messi play tomorrow? I'm not totally sure. It's likely he comes off as the bench player. If he does, that's great. That'll give us more offensive boost. But because he has a discomfort muscle soreness, it's unlikely that he'll probably make a big impact in the game tomorrow. And that's me being honest here. But I could be wrong. I'm wrong about a lot of things. So far in these predictions, I've been pretty spot on. But there's always a chance I could be wrong. So, with that being said, though, if Inter Miami does, let's say if they are blowing this game open, which would be great for Inter Miami folks like myself, Messi wouldn't even need to step in. He'll just continue resting for the bigger matches coming up to even make a push for the MLS playoffs. So I have no idea. However, Houston's offense is still good. It's still good where let's for Houston, they're in the playoffs. They're in the playoffs. That's the team, and that's a good offensive team too. They're in the playoffs. They have pretty good midfield. Their counter's pretty good. They can make people angry and pissed off, and they make bad decisions. And Houston's still nothing to be taken lightly. Now, previous history with Houston Dynamo, not been good. So not been good so far. In our expansion year, they did beat Houston. I think it was Lewis Morgan scoring that only goal in the expansion year in October. That was that big rain delay that happened. Then their second matchup ever, Houston ends up winning against Inter Miami 3-1 in DRV PNK Stadium, and a few months ago, Houston has beaten us 1-0 in Houston, Texas. So, what would be the history here tomorrow? We're about to find out. Inter Miami looking to get their second cup in the span of just a week and a half, while for Houston, they're probably looking after to get this next trophy. I think the last trophy was back in 2006. I could be wrong. But Houston definitely overdue for a trophy lifting, and we'll see what happens. Miami versus Houston. It's going to be an exciting matchup. Yeah, that's where I'm going to leave it off. I'm nervous about tomorrow. I do want this trophy win, especially USA. But yeah, no, I'm nervous that Messi might not be able to play at all, because I know this, Alba is definitely not playing tomorrow. Busquets definitely playing tomorrow. We still got Joseph Martinez coming in. We still got Leonardo Campana coming in. Robert Taylor still coming in. David Ruiz might be able to play. Just those guys who are going to play for this club tomorrow, making a difference, and we'll see what happens. And it is going to be a DRV PNK Stadium tomorrow, so there's some home field advantage there, especially with big guys like Busquets and Joseph Martinez and Campana. But yeah, there you go. And one more thing is, as well as I love it when it's at DRV PNK Stadium. There was some talk about a month ago that they could play this game at Hard Rock Stadium, but now that's definitely not happening. But Inter Miami going for their first U.S. Open Cup win, 114th tournament ever, I believe. Last victory was the team we recently played this past weekend. Let's see what happens here tomorrow night. So yeah, there you go. Let me know what you think of this preview. If I missed any keys of the game, let me know in the comments. As always, if you have enjoyed this video or enjoyed this channel, please hit that like button, subscribe more content, because Miami TG has it back, and when he does, he'll be right there with the entertainment you deserve. US Open Cup final tomorrow, and yeah, folks, I'll see you guys then. Adios.